Hello and welcome. My name is Hunter. My pronouns are he, they, and I am one of your hosts and moderators here at Power to Fly. It's great to have you here. We're going to have a power half hour with my old friend. Well, not old friend, my friend, Helen. Sorry, that was an unintended, terrible joke, Helen. We're
Hunter,
all
you need to
young
be
at heart.
careful.
I got to be careful with that one. Well, it's great. I made a mistake. I apologize right off the bat, and we can talk about that. So there we go. This is we're going to be talking about ageism in the workplace and how to combat that, what we can do. So before we get started, let's get a little bit of housekeeping done. You can turn your cameras on, join the fun. It's a great way to connect with Helen when you're asking questions. No need to worry about being Instagram ready or any of that. We are recording this, so we're going to send a rewatch link in the next few days, and you will be able to check out all of our awesome conversations at Power to Fly Chat and Learns on our YouTube channel. I highly recommend you check it out. There's so many great resources. Also, lots of other great chats with Helen as well. You can write questions in the chat. In the public forum there, please be mindful of inclusive language and speech so that we can all have a great time and enjoy this next half hour. And if you want to ask any questions anonymously, you can go ahead and select my name or Helen's name if you want in the chat and ask us directly, and we can ask a question anonymously on your behalf. And you can be sure to follow us on all the social media platforms at Power to Fly, Power to Fly on all the things. So let's jump into it. Helen, welcome. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you, Hunter. And thank you all for joining us. I look forward to this half hour with you, answering your questions. My background is that I've been a recruiter and a recruiting manager for over 30 years. And a couple of years ago, I decided to go out on my own. I am a certified coach. So I decided to work with women over 40 in helping them reach their goals professionally. And I formed a company called Tanagui. And actually, for the first time next month, I will be co-presenting on a course about what we want to do in the next phase of when we grow up older. So if any of you are interested, I will put my email in the chat box at the end, and you can email me and I can send you a brochure. I can answer questions. If you go to my website, you can book a 15-minute conference with any questions that we don't get to today. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to answer.
Awesome. Thank you, Helen. So just a reminder, the way this works, friends, is a bunch of y'all sent questions in advance. We've pulled those. They've been anonymized, so I don't know who has written them. If you want to give a shout out to your question, great. If you want to ask new questions, drop it in the chat. And I encourage you to do it early and often because this is only a half an hour one. So if I get all your questions in the last 5 minutes, we're not going to get to all of them, and we want to get to all of them. So please, please, please feel free to drop them in as we go along. Okay, Helen, let's jump right in. So we're talking about how to combat ageism during a job search. So with that lens for this chat, someone wrote, is there a subtle way to make the interviewer aware that ageism might be an unconscious bias of theirs? What are some ageism questions you've seen recruiters ask during their interviews?
I think first of all, you need to be sensitive to who your interviewer is. If you're talking to someone in HR, it might be level playing field. If you're talking to a hiring manager, you don't know. I mean, you can certainly mention that every one of us, including those of us who fall into this category, have implicit biases. So you can talk about that from a generic point of view, just to let your interviewer know that this is what you're aware of. But when you're older and you're interviewing, unless there's a focus on it or there's some reason that you feel it needs to be addressed, it might not be something that you yourself want to bring up. You can focus on what you bring to the table to do their job.
That's very important today. It's critical that you do research before you go on an interview on the company, their mission statement, what they're doing in the news, what's up and coming, what the job description said, so that you can relate to them the skills and the tools that you have that you're bringing to the table that will help them. The goal of every interviewer, hiring manager, or recruiter is to find the person who's going to have the shortest learning curve and do the best job for them. And that's what their goal is. So that's the way you need to look at it. What can I do? What does my experience allow for me to bring to the table that will help them get the job done? And that's what you need to focus on. Again, you can talk about just generically that everyone has implicit biases, and that, we should overcome them. But other than that, I think it's focusing on what your value is. As far as questions that recruiters ask, they might ask, how old are you? They might ask what year you graduated. They might talk about whether you think you have enough energy for their company. If it's a startup, they may talk about culture. Those are all kind of hints. You can always steer the conversation away from whatever those questions are, whether it's how old are you? You need to steer the conversation again. And this is why it's critical that you be informed on what they're doing. You need to kind of refocus them to what you can bring to the table, what your value is to them to get done what they need done, to manage that job that they're trying to fill. So you need to be comfortable with being able to relay that information to them. And as Hunter and I were talking about earlier, some of this is storytelling. It's creating the scenario on how you can help them achieve their goals and be successful with your experience. And so you need to come prepared to redirect conversations to that. I mean, if they push and you have to answer a question, then at the end of the day, you have to decide whether it's a place you want to be. That's important too.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And on the topic of storytelling, and we heard some of those coded questions. Do you have enough energy, cultures, things like that? Joanne from the chat asked, can you give an example statement of how you might steer them away from age questions? And I'm particularly curious about the really pointed one. If someone just said, how old are you? What's the segue from that? How do you steer the story the way you want it to go?
Well, you talk about, for me, from my perspective, you don't answer that. You don't say, I'm not sharing it. You don't say, here's my age. But you can say, well, I have the years of experience that I have are relevant to, I don't know, if it's a customer service job, to increasing customer service metrics by 50% or whatever it is. So you talk about those years of experience and the value. Again, if they pressure you again, then you have to consider whether that's a place you want to be. Technically, they're not supposed to do that, but some of them do it despite that. If they ask you, what year did you graduate? You can talk again about your specific studies relevant to what they need done. And just they're going through candidates, they're going through appointments in a row usually. So if you just distract them a bit, it usually leaves their mind. Again, unless they're a person who's so fixated on it. Number one, I'm not sure how you got the interview. And number two, do you want to be there? So
yeah, I love that. The storytelling makes me think a little bit of that song from Chicago. Give them the old razzle dazzle. They just
exactly.
Yeah. And it's important because then at the end of the day, you're talking about what really matters, which is why you're the right candidate, which is, these are my skills, these are my experience, this is what I can bring to the job, right?
Right. And educating yourself again on, I think one of the questions, and often the question is about what to say when they say you're overqualified, or, you have so many years. You have to, again, have done your homework to understand the challenges that company is facing in whatever area that you're going into or trying to get into. And in the job description, what are the challenges they're facing that you can help them solve? Because then you can say to them, no, I've researched or I've looked at what challenges your company's facing. And I feel like those are big challenges that I would love to sink my teeth into, that I could make a significant contribution to, whatever it is. So again, this is where you need to prepare yourself before you go on an interview.
Yeah. So someone else asked, how can you tell if ageism is a factor in not getting a job or being passed over for a promotion?
I think it's an easier task on the passed over, because if you have just exemplar performance reviews, if you've done an excellent job, if feedback from your supervisors has always been that you've done what was required and maybe more, maybe you've received awards, maybe there's just a history of success in your role, then you can go to your manager or to the person who is doing the promotion and ask them, and again, for people to not feel that you're going to confront them, you need to phrase it like, for my future, important for my future success, maybe you can let me know why I didn't get that role so that I can focus on those areas in the future. If they don't have an answer for you, then you can go to HR and say the same thing. I don't understand, or say, I don't understand why I didn't get that role, because here's my performance reviews. Here's the compliments I've received from my manager, and the person who got it is less qualified than me, but younger. You don't have to say that. It'll probably be. But anyway, that I think for a promotion, or even for being chosen for training or to participate in conferences, if you're getting passed over, then you need to address it. You need to say, again, not in a confrontational manner, but with the contribution I've made, with the track record I have, with the history I have in this company, I'm just curious why I keep getting passed over for that, because it's something that I'm very interested in. As far as that happening in a job search, in an interview, it's much more difficult, because the way the law is set up, the burden falls on you to prove that there was age discrimination, despite the fact that the law says if you're over 40 and you've been discriminated against, you're protected. Very difficult to prove. You have to have documentation, which is again why, as an employee, you would have your performance reviews, you would have any emails, or you need to keep all that documentation always. But as a candidate, it's much more difficult to pin them down to say that this is what they did. I mean, if their job description says they want 2 years experience, but they want you to do 20 different things that you never get in 2 years, or says, that they want someone who's a cultural fit or high energy, those are all clues. So when you go on that job description, you should be sensitive to listening to what they're saying and documenting it later. And then you might be able to go to the EEOC and file a complaint if you feel strongly about it. But it can be very subtle today. I mean, people are aware of how they can get the information they want, do what they want, and not get their hands slapped, so to speak. So, yeah.
Yeah. And we're getting so many great questions in from the chat now. This is fantastic, in the chat and also to me directly. Someone asked and mentioned asking, so they wrote to me, they said, Hunter, asking age is completely illegal in terms of discriminatory practices. And similarly, companies continue to require your grad year on applications. Sometimes there's no way around it when applying. How are companies getting away with this? And if the job requires a college degree, would a yes/no answer suffice?
It's the way their application is structured, and they're getting away with it because there is no law that says they can't. But now in some application processes or some application systems, you can put in 9999 for the date, and it will go through. In some that perhaps won't work, but in some of them you can do that. I know, like when you're building your profile on LinkedIn, you can put in 9999. So when that's possible, you can do it. Again, that's going to draw their attention, but you can certainly do it. I would do it if I were filling out an application. But there is no law that, and again, technically the Age Discrimination Employment Act protects you for age discrimination if you're over 40, but it's not specific enough to say that there's certain things they can't ask you or they can't do.
Yes, absolutely. So keep these questions coming in, friends. We're halfway through right now. We're already at the halfway mark. Can you believe it? So someone asked and commented, I have 19 years of professional experience prior to my career break of 13 years. How should this be reflected in my resume? What verbiage would you use to describe time off from a career to care for a relative?
Okay, first, in the 19 years of professional experience, depending on whether it's one chunk in one company or various companies, you should only go back 10 to 15 years if that's possible. If the 19 years was in one company, you should show a progression. So you started here and you finished here. As far as your caregiver role, you need to sit down before you write your resume, and you need to write, as a caregiver, what did you do? And not only, obviously, you were a caregiver, but what did you do? What responsibilities did you have as that caregiver? Did you manage budgets? Did you negotiate medical bills? Did you have to do time constrictions? What were the transferable skills that you did as a caregiver that a lot of them companies look for today, like time management, budget management? Again, that's what I'm saying. Sit down and write down what you did. Did you manage medical billing? Did you manage a budget for the household? Did you do the calendar for the household? All of those things, then you transition to proper verbiage for a resume, and you say, I did time management, I did budget management, I did billing discrepancies, and these are all transferable skills that people seek today. I did project management if there's something that you had to do for a specific events, let's say. So that's the way you have to look at it. You shouldn't you shouldn't hide it. You can describe it as a caregiver, but you need to identify it as actual skills, transferable skills, because everyone does, whether they're parenting or caregiving or volunteering, everyone uses skills, and you just need to really drill down and identify those skills and then put them in the verbiage for your resume.
Yeah. And on the topic of resumes, someone asked, what is the best way to structure your resume such that your age isn't easily determined by your years of experience or time in a role? And I would like to open this up a little bit as well to LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is so structured with years of like, I work here from here to here. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, you should ideally go back 10 to 15 years on your resume and not further. Most of the time when they're doing background checks, that's what they're covering in any event. But again, if you have that one, which is not as common today as it used to be, but there are people who have many years in a company. So you need to show a progression. And when you're on LinkedIn, it's the same thing. You would break it down by the years so that it's not all in front of their face. As far as your resume, structuring your resume, you need to start with the template. And it should be a classic format. And so your heading should be name, city, LinkedIn URL, email address, and phone. No address, because then it dates you. No objective, only professional summary or business summary, whatever you want to call it, but it's not objective anymore. So ensure that the format is current and that you're not dating yourself by how your resume looks. Then you can do chronological experience, again, listing either multiple companies going back 10 or 15 years or a progression, and no dates on education. They're not necessary for a resume. So those are really the keys to trying to make it difficult for them to determine your age, which is your goal.
Yes, yes. Someone, Lynn in the chat asked earlier, and this could be about perhaps the interview process. This could also perhaps be about being passed over for a promotion. Lynn asked, What do you do when they don't even mention your age at all, but you know that's what they're really thinking about? So if you can tell maybe there's a company culture, you're getting some clues, what do you do when it is maybe the elephant in the room that you're just like, oh, this is what's actually going on?
Well, again, what you have to do is divert from it. You have to prevent yourself. It's if you're going for an interview or if you're in a company, from the moment that you're seen by someone, you're being evaluated. So you need to be high energy, you need to be passionate about your work, you need to be putting your hand up to take on extra projects if it's a job, despite that elephant in the room, because that's the only way you're going to go around it. If the elephant in the room becomes more difficult, and you're in a job, then you can go to HR and have a conversation and file a complaint. But if it's in a job search, again, much more difficult, because it requires documentation. If you feel strongly that that's the case, you can go to the EEOC. But when you're sitting there and you feel the sense that they're judging you on your age, you have to make them think that that's not the case. You have to be high energy. You have to be passionate. And what you should do is take your phone and video yourself for an interview. Have a friend interview you and Zoom it and post it. Record it, and evaluate yourself. Are you, for example, one of the things they evaluate women on is that they tend to sit in the front of the seat, not sit back. And so they're more condescending and not aggressive because they sit in the front of the seat, not back. Men will always sit back and be comfortable. So you just need to be sensitive to those things. How are you dressing? Are you walking in with energy? Are you walking in with the big bag that nobody young carries anymore? Are you expressing interest and passion about what they're doing? And again, this is where the research, as time consuming as it is very important. So it's really all those things. I mean, unfortunately, the burden always falls on us, whether it's an interview or in work. The burden falls on us to convince them that we're not the grandmother or whatever.
Okay, we have just 8 minutes left. So keep those questions coming. These were fantastic. Thank you, friends, for participating. Okay, someone asked, how can you describe longevity at a previous employer as an asset when it may seem like you don't have a diversified work history?
I think, again, you have to show the progression. Did you move up in the ranks in that job? Obviously then you were doing a good job. You were successful if you were getting promoted. So you need to show the progression. You need to important today is quantifiable results. So whatever you did at that job, it should relate to what the job that you're applying for. And you need to show, again, quantifiable results. So customer service. Okay. I increased customer service engagement by 25%, whatever it is. You need to tell them specifically what you did and the success of it. And you need to be able to relate that story in an interview. So you need to think about the specifics, and you need to apply it to what they do. Again, you need to look at their mission statement, the industry they're in. Is that the same industry you were in? What in the news, what's going on with them? You can filter down to find people on LinkedIn who are with that company, look at different groups of what they're doing and where their challenges lie so that you can relay the value of what you bring despite however many years. Actually, there's a lot of value. I mean, if you look at research on cross-generational teams and productivity and success, it's always greater when there's younger and older. You could talk about if you've done mentoring programs, that the value of that. So you need to educate yourself on it really, and you need to be able to speak to it, and how important it is and how valuable it is.
Yeah.
To have a cross-generational team is what I was referring to.
So we got an anonymous question here that said, not only am I likely an older individual, I've also been out of the workforce for almost 2 years. During that time frame, I've worked on my credentialing. Any thoughts on dealing with age and being a returner?
Well, I think one of the things that I often talk about is returnship programs. And despite the limitations of the returnship programs themselves, if you Google returnship programs, you will get a list of companies that offer them. And from my perspective, these are companies that embrace experience and age because they developed a returnship program. So they're looking for people who have had previous experience. So if you look at those companies, then you can look at their career site and see what other jobs they have, even if you're not eligible for the returnship program, or it's not the right time of year for the returnship program. You can look at the name of the company, go to their career site and see what you can apply for. Again, if you've done updated credentialing and training of any sort, that should be on your resume. There's also an age-friendly institute that identifies employers committed to hiring other workers. And if you Google that, you'll find them, and they'll have a list of companies that embrace, again, hiring older workers. And those are the things that you should look at, those companies, and then do some more research on what's going on with those companies and how you could make a contribution to that, how you might be able to improve something. If you've had, for example, I had somebody who worked for me who had the most amazing skill of process analysis. She could take any process and tear it apart and make it better at the end. Maybe you've done that. Maybe again, you created something that was key to improve numbers or success in the sales department. Whatever it may be, you need to apply it to them.
Excellent points. So we only have just a couple minutes left. You mentioned when we were talking about in the beginning with some coded language, such as overqualified. Someone asked, can you share some tips on how to respond when we're told we're overqualified for a role? What stops companies from hiring folks with vast experience?
Well, again, yeah, as I mentioned earlier, they're afraid you won't be challenged, or that maybe you're taking this job because it's the first one available and you'll leave quickly. So you need to talk about why you want that job, which means you need to understand the job description and the company and the industry, and show them that it's the work that you want to do. So whether you, again, looking at what's in front of you as far as understanding their mission statement, their philosophy, the things that their research team is working on, how does it apply? And how did you, in the past, how have you identified challenges in your work, and how have you overcome those challenges and apply it to them, and talk to them about the work that they need done and how that's the work that you want to do, and that your previous experience gave you the skills to do that work and be successful. So if you do that, then it should alleviate their concern that you won't be challenged. If you can specifically say to them, I understand the challenges. So again, for example, if they want to increase their sales numbers 20%, I understand the challenges of getting the sales team on the same page and more aggressive and being more successful, because in my previous job, I did this, and this for our sales team to improve it. And so I understand those challenges. I think it's very exciting, and those are the challenges that I'm looking for, kind of thing.
Well, Helen, as prophesied, as promised, this flew by, these 30 minutes. In this last minute, is there anything you'd like to share with the folks that are on the job hunt? Any last bits of advice that you'd like to offer up? And how to connect with you, which you just dropped.
I just put that in the chat box, my website and my email. But for those looking for jobs, it's looking for a job is a job. And so you need to commit the time. And something that we haven't touched on because we had such short time is networking, and it's critical. And it's just something like 70% of jobs are filled through networking and some not ever even posted. So you need to do your networking homework. If you go to my website, also you can download a career planning workbook, and that has things like how to format your resume and how to commit time to networking and how to, you can do the research and get these things done. But those are the keys, is formatting your resume properly, doing your networking, and doing your research homework. Very important.
Awesome. Thank you, Helen. It's always a delight. I love our chats. I hope we can do them weekly more often. I feel like it's like every quarter, but it's always a delight to see you. But we should do them monthly, I feel like.
Thank you all for coming, and thank you, Hunter, for moderating and doing such a great job. Yes, it's been wonderful.
Anytime. And thank you all for your questions and your participation. Really helped drive the conversation today. Absolutely fantastic. So with that, I hope you all have a great rest of your day. And Helen, I hope to see you soon. Thanks again.